The news at this hour begins in Nigeria, where the Senate on Wednesday summoned the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Cardoso, over the free fall of the naira and hyperinflation. The summon was through its Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, headed by senatorial person Adetokunbo Abiru. The governor and his team were asked to appear on Tuesday next week to explain the state of the economy and the free flow of the naira at the forex market. The committee at a meeting on Wednesday expressed concern over the endless weakening of the naira that saw it rose to 1,520 naira to a dollar as at Wednesday. Speaking with journalists after the meeting held behind closed doors at the National Assembly, Senator Abiru said the state of the economy, especially the inflation index, was of great concern to lawmakers. Staying in Nigeria, the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ola Olukoyede, has revealed that the anti-graft agency uncovered how a religious sect in Nigeria is laundering money for terrorists. This was as he also revealed that another religious body was found to be protecting a money launderer after some money suspected to have been laundered was traced to the organization's bank accounts. The FCC boss made the revelation on Wednesday at the Musa Aradua Center in Abuja during a one-day dialogue on youth, religion, and the fight against corruption. He noted that religious organizations, institutions, sects, and bodies have been found culpable of money laundering. Let's now tell you that Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission says it has developed a tool for tracking fraud in government's ministries, departments, and agencies. The chairman of the nation's anti-graft agency, while speaking at the launch of the tool called the Fraud Risk Control Project, says that the tool will notify the commission to act of financial irregularities in public agencies. It says that it will save the nation's scarce resources that is usually deployed to investigating corruption. Now, Nigeria has moved 5 places up to rank 145 out of 180 countries assessed in the 2023 Corruption Perception Index released in Abuja. The index released by the global anti-corruption watchdog Transparency International also says that Nigeria gained 1 point from 23 to 24 out of 100 points in the Corruption Perception Index results. Amadine Uyi tells us more.
With a promise to fight corruption, President Bola Tinubu has not been shy to rattle the big players in Nigeria's political space. The questioning of a former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, the sack of the Chief Executive Officer of Nigeria's National Social Investment Program Agency, including the suspension of the current Minister of Humanitarian Affairs over corruption allegations, it seems the current government is determined to match its words with action. Thus, the release of the 2023 Corruption Perception Index reports by International Transparency Watchdog is one event that many has looked up to. The country director of Transparency International in Nigeria maintains that the organization is not partisan and has no interest in politics. Thus, its reports should be taken more seriously.
We are not politicians. We are not opposition, people. We are interested in seeing our country progress because corruption has done incredible damage to our reputation, to our country. The level of insecurity we see is associated with also the corruption.
Though the report indicates that Nigeria has improved slightly, several stakeholders think it is not yet time to rejoice, as there is still much more to be done to improve the public perception of corruption in the country.
Public office holders in Nigeria have failed to show empathy or concern for citizens' plight. Rather, we have seen wasteful appropriation and approval of billions of naira for luxury items.
The Nigerian judiciary was expected to display independence and dispatch justice transparently, as well as in equity and fairness. However, different conflicting rulings by the different courts have questioned the independence and integrity of the judiciary as an institution.
Some of them highlight recommendations to improve citizens' perception to the war against corruption.
We are recommending that the independence of the Nigerian justice system needs to be strengthened to shield it from interference. Merit-based promotion and appointment should be carried out rather than political appointment. This will help win back the trust of the citizens in the judiciary.
It is important that government take necessary steps to block leakages, to ensure that people that are given trust in leadership did not abuse offices.
The greatest antidote to anti-corruption is openness and transparency. And numerous public institutions in Nigeria are yet to fully comply with the Freedom of Information Act, the Open Government Partnership, the Transparency and Integrity Index, and other international commitments Nigeria has signed on to.
Nigeria moved 5 places up to the rank of 145 out of 180 countries assessed. It also gained 1 point added to its previous 24 out of the 100 maximum points in the 2023 CPI results. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadin Uyi.
To further discuss this, I'm being joined by a political and governance expert, Umar Yakubu. Thank you so much, Umar Yakubu, for joining us on the news. Umar, can you please unmute your device so that we can hear you properly?
Yeah, thank you. I can hear you, if you can hear me.
Of course, we can hear you too. Now, Nigeria's moved up 5 places by only 1 point anyway on the Corruption Perception Index. Is that a sign of good things to come or under this particular administration, or is just a flash in the pan?
Well, the truth is +1 is better than 0. So if somebody writes an exam and scores in 1 year 24 over 100 and he scores 25 over 100 in the next year, you will say he has improved. And that's what we have just done, just by 1 point. And the ranking has to do, it doesn't really mean much on the ranking. If you are 150 this year and you become 155, it doesn't mean much. What matters is the marks. And we were 24 last year, we're now 25. So yes, we have made progress, and it's something we should celebrate about, but there's a lot more we should need to do.
In our report, one of the stakeholders talked about government interference, political interference, and in some cases, some institutions who interfere in the adjudication of justice, most especially in our justice system, and of course, other institutions that are meant to fight corruption in the country. Now, when we continue to have these interferences, that would always erode having factuality and transparency when it comes to results. How do you think Nigeria can deal with that if we hope to consolidate on this very modest gain?
Yeah, the truth is Nigeria is a developing economy, and one of the characteristics of a developing economy is that some of the structures are weak. That's why you have all these kind of interferences. If you take strong economies, for example, the examples we like to use, let's say the United States or the United Kingdom, where their democracy are 100 or 200 years old, you find out that institutions are strong enough to resist interference by the political class. But for a developing economy like Nigeria, we're evolving, we're getting better every day. So these things are expected with the kind of economy we have. And I think things will get better as we continue to deepen our democracy. And if you see, one of the things that improved on the index is that there's more civic space, there's more space for civil society, for the media to discuss all these issues. So this is a sign, and these are one of the kind of things they check that improves our index. So for example, now, if a country decides to improve its civic space where there is more participation of civil society, more participation of media to report these things, and action is being taken, you find out that your index gets better year on year on.
Now, the FCC under its current new chief, Owukpa, according to some, is set to be conducting a lot of investigations and doing a bit of revisiting of corruption cases, trying to look at cases of past governors being alleged to have been involved in corruption or graft, as the case may be. Now, do you think that the anti-corruption agency is playing a vital role in changing this narrative, and can they always do more in dealing with cases that has to do with corruption?
Yeah, in the any anti-corruption regime, the anti-corruption agency plays one of the critical pillars in the fight against any corruption. The judiciary plays a role, the citizens play a role. Now, what the new chairman, as you reported, is doing is there are two types of corruption. Just basically, if you talk about the grand corruption and the petty corruption, and they are both dangerous, very dangerous. You need to get a passport, you have to pay a bribe, you need access to healthcare, access to education. All those are petty corruption. And what we have been dealing with mostly is the petty corruption, because they're easier to convict, easier to jail, and easier to investigate. They are not part of the political class. So what you are saying is the new FCC chairman wants to go back to start investigating and prosecuting the high-level corruption that involves politically exposed persons, and that's the way to go. So when they are ranking your country, or ranking our country rather, Nigeria, these are the kind of things they check, because they know it's quite easy or easier to jail the people that do 419, petty theft, they pay bribes, but those that are involved in grand corruption, where there are different arms of government, there are law enforcement probably involved, the security agencies, the judiciary, those ones are harder to convict. So it's a right step in the right direction to bring out all those cases of past politically exposed persons and they take their cases for prosecution.
But then he has come out to say recently that there have been inhibitions in his investigation courses in some certain cases that he has been that he had to administer over recently. The case as regards the money laundering issue for terrorism or terrorist acts in the country. So when we continue to have these kind of impediments, how do you think it will be able to bring the perpetrators of these criminal activities to book?
Yeah, if you look at the predicate offenses, there are so many, there are over 30, and their complexities vary. Money laundering cases are much more difficult to prosecute because of the layers of involvement of different institutions, different people, different mechanisms, and in most cases, different jurisdictions, because money moves out, assets move out. So it takes longer time to prosecute such cases. Similar with terrorism cases. With terrorism cases, it's much more complex in nature because usually the source for terrorist financing could be legitimate. So the investigation is much harder. So I think we just need to be more patient, but unlike other strict liability offenses that is easier to prove, example, cybercrime, they just trace your IP address and find out whether you committed the crime or not. Those are easier to prove because it usually involves one or two parties. There are one or two layers. But those that have complex layers is much more difficult. So it do not be fair to assess the anti-corruption agencies on just a flat parameter. Different types of crimes require different types of approaches and of course take different timelines to conclusion.
Well, the online factor and what is expected to be achieved is to ensure transparency and accountability in all of government dealings. We've not really heard much about the ICPC anyway. The FCC has always been at the vanguard of this. But then for this administration, if Nigeria hopes to move forward and climb the ladder and be more transparent, what do you think this current administration must do in that regards to keep pushing that positive trajectory?
Okay, you see, if you study the most corruption cases, the largest space where corruption takes place is the procurement process. Without procurement, you will not have most of these cases. Of course, nepotism is corruption, abuse of office is corruption. But if you solve the problem of procurement, you probably solve 65 to 70% of the problem. Now, what do they need to do? Use the word transparency. Imagine a scenario where all procurement processes in the country, all of it, is online and accessible to civil society and to media because it's public money. There's nothing should be hidden under the table, but now we only get to hear of scandals, as you are showing on your screen now, when two people do not agree and somebody decides to blow the whistle. But when they don't agree, nobody knows what's going on when they all decide to cooperate, the political actors. But when you have a transparent system proactive disclosure of information on all procurement processes, I will tell you the country will reduce its corruption by 65 to 70%, because most corrupt acts are done behind the veil. So that is the way to go, to deepen transparency, especially on fiscal matters that have to do with the budgets, with the audits, and with procurement. Make all this is open, accessible, and they are all working, and anybody can see. Now that blocks all the leakages and the room for corruption.
So finally, in this slide, we've had the whistleblower policy. We've had the TSA, Treasury Single Accounts, come into place. Now we are talking about the Fraud Risk Control Project. Do you think this could be a game changer in ensuring transparency in all of government procurements and financial dealings?
Whistleblowing policy didn't do much. It started in 2019, and by 2020 it was dead because it was a policy. You need to have a whistleblower law that will be able to protect the whistleblower. If the whistleblower is not protected, nobody's going to come out to blow the whistle. Then two, you have to have a mechanism to ensure that the person that blows the whistle is paid adequately according to the percentage that government sets. So that policy was just a stopgap measure. What we need is a law. Then to add to that, you need a Witness Protection Act to ensure that all these things are covered. And that way, you now have to have a coordinating agency. For example, it could be the Minister of Justice or the Minister of Finance, but you can't have all these policies domiciled in 4 or 5 agencies and you cannot coordinate. That's why that one died down.
Okay, Omar Yakubu, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
Moving on now, at least 12 loggers were killed in northeast Nigeria's Benue State near the border with Cameroon when their vehicle hit a landmine in an area where Boko Haram jihadists are active. The loggers were on their way to the bush to collect firewood when the flatbed vehicle conveying them rolled over a mine suspected to have been planted by Boko Haram jihadists on the highway outside Pulka village, the NGO said in 2 reports on the incident, which happened on Monday. Northeast Nigeria is at the heart of a more than a decade-long jihadist insurgency where militants still target rural areas even after they have been pushed back from the large swaths of land they controlled at the height of the conflict. A bit of politics now. The crisis in the All Progressives Congress in Benue State, Nigeria's North Central, has deepened as APC Ehaje Ward 1 in the Owukpa of Ogbadibo Local Government Area of the state passed a vote of no confidence on the state chairman of the party, Austin Agada. According to a statement released on Wednesday signed by 8 APC Ehaje Ward 1 members, the state chairman has also been suspended, but in a swift reaction, the reportedly suspended state chairman, Austin Agada, has said that his suspension was null and void. In a statement signed by the ward chairman, Gordon Abba, and 7 others from the Ehaje Council ward of the state, they accused Agada of anti-party activities, adding that when he was invited by the EXCO, that is Agada, ignored the invitation. To post-election litigation stories, the Supreme Court has affirmed the election of Ahmadu Fintiri of the People's Democratic Party as Adamawa governor. In its judgment, a 5-member panel of the Apex Court unanimously dismissed the appeal by Aishatu Ahmed Dahiru, the candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the last governorship election in the state. In the lead judgment, Justice John Okoro, who presided over the panel, held that the declaration of Dahiru winner of the election by the state's resident electoral commissioner was unlawful and a nullity. Justice Okoro further held that it was the returning officer of any election that is empowered by the Electoral Act to announce the results of an election, and that any other person who assumes that role shows an act of illegality.
Time for governance. Supreme Court has brought this to a rest. And as citizens of Adamawa State, the state is bigger than individuals. The state is ours, belongs to us, and our generations yet unborn. We call on all Adamawa State citizens to please come put their hands together with the government to bring development to our people at every level. We want to thank everyone for standing with us. I want to thank everyone for ensuring that Adamawa has been peaceful even through the trying times. From the lower courts up to the Supreme Court today, we've had peace in Adamawa State. We want to thank our citizens and our indigents for keeping peace in Adamawa State. I want to pledge as a government that the developments we see, now we can put more effort into bringing more development because our attention will no longer be divided. Now it is over. So we call on everyone, no matter whom it is, as long as you have Adamawa State as your interest, from whatever party. We are brothers, we are one big family. Adamawa State is our home. Let's come together, join hands together, and bring development.
Abia State government has mooted plans to develop a new master plan for its commercial city, Aba, in order to give it the much-desired aesthetics deserving of an international city. Since the announcement, the people who live in Aba or do business there have shared their thoughts on the plan. News Central's Chinwe Ogede reports that the state government, through its Commissioner for Information and Culture, Prince Oke Kano, said government will await the recommendations of a special committee on the redesigning of Aba before actions will be taken.
On plains threatened by flood during rainy season, plagued with deplorable roads, yet filled with abundant resources, popularly called the Enyimba City, yet lacks the physical attributes of greatness. Nearly every space in the city has some form of buying and selling going on there. It is home to Enyimba Stadium and some big markets known across Africa and beyond. Not even the Enyimba Stadium, which hosts international matches, is spared from trading, as the entire vicinity engages in buying and selling.
You need to squeeze your way through before you can access the stadium. It's very, very unfair. You don't see it now. I think this is the only stadium I've been to that is located right in the middle of the market. Apart from Sundays, if you play ball here on Wednesdays, you see that the roads are always traffic jam here.
So what we are looking at is the possibility of revamping the stadium. Currently there are no access to the stadium, no parking. You can't even access it because people that trade on the roads have occupied the whole area.
Abia State government believes Aba does not look like what it represents and has therefore embarked on a mission to fix the city, which will be contained in a new master plan.
It's also approved the setting up of a special committee for the development of a new commercial core for Aba. That will speak to the development of new markets in Aba.
The government has set up a committee to look at the possibility of setting up a new commercial core for the city. Currently, there is none. We just have disparate locations of markets with no coordinated attention to planning, to the experience of the city, or how the city intends to grow.
The residents of Aba have welcomed the development, but would want government to ensure they do not lose their means of livelihood whilst going about it.
They need to create an alternative plan for those people doing the business already. That, okay, people can stay here, you can be doing this thing here, why will you structure this area? If the government is ready to do that, let them allow them to do their business.
To achieve the new master plan, when created, it will take the state government a period of 30 years with sustainability from different successive governments, and will also require the political will for the programs to be successfully implemented. In Abakoni Central, Chile.
To health matters now, the Lagos State government has called for a collaborative effort and increased awareness of neglected tropical diseases which are actively present in major local government areas in the state. To commemorate Neglected Tropical Disease Day 2024, the State Ministry of Health noted that these diseases are being ignored despite their devastating health, social and economic consequences and significant global implications. News Central's Adeshewa Dushoga reports.
The World Health Organization describes neglected tropical diseases as a diverse group of conditions caused by a variety of pathogens, mainly prevalent among impoverished communities in tropical areas. To check the level of awareness of NTDs among residents of Lagos State, we hit the streets to ask people what they know about neglected tropical diseases.
tropical disease. I've heard about it, but I didn't really have a deep understanding about it.
I've not heard. So where is that discovered from?
No, this is my first time of hearing it. What's that?
As a city located within the tropics, Lagos State is mostly affected by lymphatic filariasis, which is the most common of the NTDs and endemic in 6 local government areas. While schistosomiasis, also a kind of neglected tropical disease, is said to be present in 13 local government areas in the state. As a result, the Lagos State government held an awareness walk to commemorate World Tropical Diseases Day 2024 and to further educate the public on the prevalence of these diseases and the urgent need for united action to address the inequalities that drive NTD.
We have higher and low endemicity. We have 3 LGA that is very high of soil-transmitted emitters. These 3 LGA are Ibejulaki, Amu Ward and Ojo local government.
With the theme of the year focusing on the keywords Unite, Act and Eliminate, there are calls for collaborative effort from the federal government, NGO partners and the World Health Organization to eliminate all NTDs in the country by 2030.
Sustainable financing of NTDs is a global health and development success story which cannot be overemphasized.
For schistosomiasis, we are low and we have treated successfully for 2 years. This year made it the 3rd one. So we have eliminated schisto and very soon we'll be sharing the result.
Neglected tropical diseases are tagged as neglected due to their absence from the global health agenda, even when the focus is on universal health coverage. NTDs have very limited resources allotted to them and are almost ignored by global funding agencies. In Lagos for News Central, Adeshewa Odushoga.
The news continues in West Africa, where the mission deployed by the European Union to Senegal to observe the presidential election on February 25 is asking to meet the candidate Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who is currently in prison, and considers it very important that he be able to campaign. The mission's head in Senegal, Marlene Bjork, tells a news conference that their aim is to see all the candidates who have been validated by the Constitutional Council, whatever their situation, and they hope to be able to meet Diomaye wherever possible.
De voir tous les candidats qui ont été validés par le Conseil constitutionnel et donc quelle que soit leur situation. Donc on espère de pouvoir aussi rencontrer Monsieur Diomaye ou que ça soit possible. On est en train de faire les démarches. Et il me semble très important que les candidats qui ont été retenus par le Conseil constitutionnel puissent faire campagne en toute égalité. Et donc, évidemment, nous espérons qu'il y aura que ça peut se faire, parce qu'on ne va pas interférer dans le processus électoral tant qu'elle est, mais on va venir avec des recommandations, avec une analyse approfondie, aussi basée sur toutes les observations de nos observateurs de longue durée qui seront sur le terrain pendant plusieurs semaines et aussi après les élections qui pourront suivre tout le processus.
We also tell you that the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, tells a news conference since April 2023 that at least 8 million people have been displaced from their homes by the war in Sudan. Grandi says most are still in Sudan, but more than 1.5 million have gone to neighboring countries, adding that the refugee response is poorly funded and predicting that without improvements, some refugees may leave and one day head to Europe.
2023, so less than a year ago, 8 million people have been displaced from their homes in Sudan. 8 million. Majority inside Sudan as internally displaced, but increasingly also outside. More than 1.5 million refugees have gone to neighboring countries. The leaders in Sudan are losing the trust of their people. Because some of these people told me, even if there is peace, I am afraid to go back. Because after what I have seen of the violence of the war in Khartoum, children killed, women raped, we don't want to go back. We are afraid even if there is peace.
Now in North Africa, Libyan authorities have started sending 350 irregular migrants to their home country, Egypt. Libya has become a key departure point on North Africa's Mediterranean coast for migrants, mainly from other parts of Africa, risking dangerous sea voyages in hopes of reaching Europe.
ترحيل مهاجرين غير شرعيين من الجنسية المصرية لمكتب الترحيل بجهاز مكافحة الهجرة غير شرعية، ويقارب عدد المرحلين 350 مهاجر. كما نحب أن ننوه على إحصائية سنة 2023 عدد المرحلين بالكامل 23361 مهاجر من جنسيات أفريقية وآسيوية، وأغلب المرحلين من جنسية نيجيريا.
كنا متجهين إلى لامباتوزا إيطاليا، وشدونا من البحر. بعد 9 ساعات في المية شدونا من المية.
Away from North Africa, let's now tell you that after decades of progress against cholera, the disease has seen a global upsurge since 2021. More than 1 million people are thought to be infected with cholera every year. Afghanistan and Syria have suffered huge outbreaks, but in 2023, over half of the country's reporting cases were found in Africa. Zambia is among the latest to battle its worst outbreak in decades, and its vaccination rollout is under pressure as stocks face increased global demand. To fight the disease, a raft of measures has been introduced by the government, including a ban on the digging of shallow wells and the selling of food in unhygienic conditions. In a speech earlier this month, President Hakainde Hichilema promised also to upgrade poorly planned informal settlements and to prevent new ones from emerging. From other continents, we tell you that the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees says it is extremely important to have an independent investigation into the special individual cases that Israel brought to its attention. UNRWA Director of External Relations and Communications, Tamara El Rifai, stated this after major donors suspended funding to the UN agency over accusations that 12 of its staff members were involved in the October 7 attack by Hamas militants against Israel. An Israeli intelligence document dossier alleges that some 190 UNRWA employees, including teachers, have doubled as Hamas or Islamic Jihad fighters. Palestinian officials have, however, accused Israel of falsifying information to tarnish UNRWA's image.
Have announced the freezing of their financial contributions to UNRWA, and this is extremely damaging. The risks over our ability to continue providing humanitarian assistance in Gaza in the middle of the war to 2.2 million people is very, very high. And we have been pleading with the donors, with our partners, to stand by the Palestinians in Gaza and to enable UNRWA, the largest humanitarian agency in Gaza today, to continue providing food, medical assistance, clean water, shelter. We have 33,000 people. Most of them, all of them almost, are very hardworking, very committed. They have been in the agency for many years. And so it's extremely important for us to really have an independent investigation into these specific individual cases that Israel...
In the meantime, British Foreign Secretary David Cameron has discussed ways to diminish tensions in the region after meeting with his Omani counterpart during his visit to Oman. Tensions have soared in the region since the October 7 attacks by Hamas against Israel, with U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria coming under attack more than 165 times in the intervening months. The United States and Britain have also launched a campaign of airstrikes against Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militants who have carried out repeated attacks on shipping in the Red Sea in what they say is solidarity with Gaza. According to U.S. Central Command, the U.S. military shot down the latest anti-ship missile fired towards the Red Sea by the Houthis late on Tuesday. And away from that, as the Russian Central Election Commission rounds up accepting submissions from candidates, banners and digital displays pop up in Moscow advertising the upcoming vote. Some have the opinion that many will vote for Russian President Vladimir Putin, while Kremlin critic Boris Nadezhdin, who submitted a support petitions to be cleared by the electoral body to run for president, is a complete outsider because he has no program.
Все устали, у всех работа, быт, поэтому тяжело, все пытаются выжить.
Нет, я не знаю, многие ставят как раз на Владимира Владимировича, а это просто в последнее время мелькает, но я думаю, что это совершенно аутсайдер. Ну, ни программа, ничего, поэтому...
Дай бог, чтобы их не было.
Кого?
Китайская поговорка есть такая, что самое плохое, которое ты можешь пожелать человеку, дай бог, чтобы ты жил во время перемен.
China's foreign ministry says that Afghanistan should not be excluded from the international community after President Xi Jinping was presented with credentials from the Taliban government envoy to Beijing. The ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said China has always pursued a friendly foreign policy towards all Afghan people and has maintained diplomatic relations and exchanges in various fields with Afghanistan. While most of the world treats Afghanistan's Taliban government as a pariah, China is growing diplomatic and economic links. Top-level meetings between officials, new mineral deals, and the upgrading of transport routes between the two countries are regularly championed by Taliban government officials.
作为阿富汗传统友好邻邦，中方始终奉行面向全体阿富汗人民的友好外交政策，同阿富汗保持外交关系和各领域交流合作。中方接受阿富汗临时政府派遣新任驻华大使，并向中国国家领导人递交国书正本，这是正常的外交安排。希望国际社会加强同阿富汗临时政府的接触交流，鼓励其积极回应国际社会关切。 共同帮助阿富汗推进重建发展，支持阿方打击暴恐势力，为地区和平稳定与繁荣做出积极贡献。
Talking business now, according to Bloomberg reports, Dangote, Africa's largest refinery, will begin importing crude oil from the United States in February. Trafigura Group has facilitated a deal to supply Dangote refinery with 2 million barrels of West Texas Intermediate Midland crude. This marks the first time the refinery will purchase non-Nigerian crude, reflecting the evolving dynamics of the global oil industry. Oyeyemi Oke, partner at AO2 Law, addressed the concerns surrounding Dangote refinery's decision to buy oil from the United States during his appearance on the Business Edge show.
Right, but I think how we should look at this would be from what I would call a commercial perspective. Now, the refinery was built not only to, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware that the refinery was built only to refine Nigerian oil. That's one. Two is that the question would be what has led to the owners of Dangote refinery looking to other sources of crude oil apart from Nigeria, right? The answers would be the question of, the issue of crude oil availability, right, which is the feedstock for the refinery. As we well know, there's a shortage of crude oil availability for supply to the local market. And perhaps the reason for this is that over the years, what we have been doing as a country is to export crude oil with little attention paid to the local market, perhaps because of the moribund government-owned refinery. Now, the Dangote refinery coming on stream definitely will change the game in terms of how oil producers need to cater for both the local market and the international market.
Let's also tell you that Femi Oladenyi, partner at Argentile Capital, shared his perspective on Nigeria's central bank's efforts to improve liquidity in the foreign exchange market during his appearance on the Business Edge show.
What is obvious is that the central bank is now trying to get back some level of stability into the supply of the market. Notice I'm not talking about pricing now. The first thing is to ensure that people can actually have access to the dollar at whatever price that they're willing to pay for it. And I think that is something that the central bank has seemed to be focused on. The fact that they've been able to clear out almost $2.5 billion of backlog obligations is a positive development, and it's one that we should hope that will start to bring some level of stability to the market.
And that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our top stories. Nigeria's anti-graft agency, EFCC, says it has uncovered religious sects that launders money for terrorists. Libya deports over 350 Egyptian migrants. UN says over 8 million Sudanese displaced by unrest. Do send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on your screen. You can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, StarTimes channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekan Onabanjo.